What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and we have some breaking news. Gus Malzahn, head coach of Auburn, has been fired. So last night, LSU, Florida, big surprise, and we get an even bigger surprise today. I did not expect this at all. You guys know I am an Auburn fan. I try to do my best to keep things unbiased here on this channel. I think I do a really good job of it. A lot of times people have no idea who my favorite team is, and a lot of times people accuse me of being an Alabama fan. So, but yes, I am an Auburn fan. So this one definitely, this hits home. This is huge news, and I think it is a terrible decision. I think the timing of this decision could not be any worse. I'll get into why I think that is the case. I know it was not a great year for Auburn this year, but they lived up to my expectations. I picked this team to go 6-4. They were 6-4. They did about what I expected them to do. You had a brand new offensive coordinator in Chad Morris. You had no spring practice really, and we just found out last night. If you watched the game, I didn't even know this, but a couple of weeks before practices, they weren't even sure if they were going to play. So with all the distractions off the field, they weren't even sure if they were going to play this year. And I think Gus did a pretty good job given how young this team was and given the fact that it was basically a brand new offensive line. Yes, there were times where it was very frustrating to watch. And that's the thing with Gus's offense. A lot of times it's been frustrating. But at the same time, there have been times when it's been great. And I think you just have to live with that. I believed that next year was going to be a very special year for this Auburn team, and I thought that if they didn't have a great year next year, I thought it was time for him to go. So it's not like I'm a huge Gus fan and I expected him to stay there for 100 years or anything like that. But I could see the potential for next year coming, and I could see them potentially having a really, really good year. And again, I've been pretty accurate on Auburn in the past. If you've followed my channel, I predicted their record exactly right every year but one. And if you follow back to last year when I talked about Texas A&M before the season even started, I said this is not Texas A&M's year, but 2020 will be. That's exactly how it played out, and I felt the same way about this Auburn team. I thought they had a chance to be really good in 2021, but now who knows what they're going to do. Again, the timing of this is just terrible. You have such a strange offseason when you have seniors possibly coming back. You have maybe limited scholarships. You couldn't recruit the same way you normally can recruit. I mean, there have been so many disruptions. So many things are just off. Now, who's going to want to go to Auburn if Gus Malzahn, the coach that's been recruiting them, is gone, and they don't even have a head coach, and the early signing day is next week? This is just a disaster for Auburn. I don't know what they're thinking. This is just terrible timing. If you were going to do it, maybe they should have done it after they lost to Alabama and go ahead and try to get somebody hired pretty quick. I mean, if they were going to do it this year, but I felt like they should wait until next year, see how things go, give it one more year. Next year is going to be a great opportunity. Alabama loses a ton of their talent this year. More than likely. Of course, we don't know who all is going to leave. But more than likely, they're going to lose a ton, and they were going to be vulnerable next year. And Auburn was going to get Georgia and Alabama at home. Bo Nix in his third year and a full offseason with Chad Morris. I mean, they had a chance to be really good next year, I'm telling you. I know it didn't look that way this year, but they had a lot of injuries. The offensive line was so young. The whole team was really young. And I think they have really blown an opportunity to have a great year next year, unless they get the right guy who can come in and get things turned around quickly. You remember Gus Malzahn in his first year was able to do that, so I'm not saying it won't happen. I just think they should have waited one more year. It'll be very interesting, very interesting. So depending on who they hire, that's going to maybe change my mind on whether or not I think this was a good decision. I, like most fans, would love to see Hugh Freeze at Auburn. I think bringing him back to the SEC, head coach at Auburn, would be a huge win for them. I think it would be an upgrade. You look at what he has done at Liberty, and he might as well bring Malik Willis with him back to Auburn. If you go back to last year and you watch that spring game, and if you followed me, I talked about how Malik Willis would be the starter. I thought he was, with what he could do on the ground and just the intangibles that he brought to the table and the big arm, I thought he was going to be the guy. And then they went with Bo Nix. I think that was a mistake. Obviously, Bo Nix has not really lived up to the hype. He's had some great moments, but at the same time, he's had some really rough times, and we're just not seeing the development that I think we expected to see. And maybe that's a big reason why Gus is gone. Maybe because of Bo Nix struggling this year, and the fact that he really has not done great with quarterbacks. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's why he's gone. But again, if you could get a guy like Hugh Freeze, or maybe there's some other guys out there that could potentially come in. I really haven't put a ton of thought into this. He's the only guy that's come to mind. But I don't get it, and I think Auburn fans, they really don't like Gus, and they expect a whole lot more. But overall, I think he's done a pretty good job at Auburn. Look, this is not Alabama. He's going up against Nick Saban, the best coach, the best program in the country in his own state. And then you go to another state where Auburn traditionally gets a lot of recruits. You go to Georgia, and that's probably the second best recruiting head coach in the country, and Kirby Smart. It's a tough place to win. He's been able to beat Saban multiple times. I think he's probably had more success against Alabama, against Nick Saban, than any other coach really in the country, especially in the SEC. So again, if you look at the big picture, he's been a pretty good coach for Auburn. And I know, again, this was a rough year, but it could have been a lot worse. I mean, it really could have been. They could have lost to Arkansas, could have lost to Ole Miss. A couple of calls went their way in those games. I mean, the record could have been a lot worse. And then you'd say, wow, this season was a disaster. But for them to get through at 6-4, playing only SEC games, playing a very tough schedule, and playing with such a young team, I thought that this was a mistake. I thought they should wait one more year. Who knows if this team will even play in a bowl game. Kevin Steele has been named the interim head coach. He might be a candidate to be the head coach. He's done an excellent job with the defense at Auburn. I don't know if they're potentially looking to go that route. If they do go that route, who do they bring in as offensive coordinator? A lot of different things that could happen potentially here. It's going to be very interesting to see as we start to see these coaches get fired. South Carolina's already hired a new coach. Vanderbilt, they're looking for a new coach. So we're going to start to see more coaches get fired. And it's going to be really fun to see who gets hired to these jobs. But here's the thing with Auburn, and I talked about Alabama and Georgia, the rivals, and how hard it is to recruit and everything. Auburn is not an elite program. They're just not. They're not Alabama. I would say, could be in a similar class as Georgia, but they're not Alabama. And I think it seems like Auburn fans expect Auburn to be on Alabama's level. That's just not going to happen. You have Alabama, you have Clemson, you have Ohio State. You have a few elite programs. Auburn is not going to, I don't think any coach is going to get Auburn to that level, to where they're competing for a playoff spot every year. It's just not going to happen at Auburn. And when you look at this team, this program, and where Gus has had them, it's not that bad. I'm telling you, it's almost like Auburn fans are entitled, and they think that Auburn should be right there with Alabama. Look, Alabama is a dynasty. Nick Saban is maybe the best head coach in the history of college football. I mean, Auburn is not going to get to Alabama's level, and if they expect to get there, and they keep firing coaches until they get there, that's just going to ruin this program. So again, I'm not big on this decision. I don't think it was a great decision. Let's see who they hire. I might change my mind, especially if they can get Hugh Freeze. I know some people don't want him because he's got a little bit of baggage. Look, I don't really care. Just if he can win football games, that's really all that matters. It's not like he did anything too horrible. And so that, again, would be my pick. I would love to know who you guys think about, or who you guys think could be the next coach at Auburn. Who do you think they might be looking to hire? Who would you like to see, especially for an Auburn fan? Who would you like to see Auburn hire? Give me your comments down below. Again, I think this was 1 year too soon. I think they should have waited to see what would happen in 2021. If it was a bad year, then I think it was time for Gus to go. But who knows? Maybe they could have had a very special year. Maybe could have won the SEC, made the playoff. Could have had a great year. And now we'll never know what would have happened with Gus. But maybe the new coach will be able to take them to that level next year as well. Usually it takes a little time, but this is not going to be a rebuild. They have a ton of talent. And look at this year. Some first coaches had really good years. Look at Arkansas. Look at Missouri. It could happen. So I'm really looking forward to seeing who they hire and what this team looks like in 2021.